Hi everyone, it's Natalie here. I wanted to do a little follow-up to the Kipper videos about what happened on Wednesday. Wednesday, I did not have all of the information. Yesterday, I spent the day taking in all of the information. What I could never have predicted or understood at the time I was reading that third spread with these three cards was just how correct that would be in terms of what was actually happening. So, the unexpected thing that happened with police and police officers that really leaves me in shock is just how easily corrupted they are and were. What happened at the Capitol on Wednesday with officers letting the insurrectionists pass the barriers voluntarily, taking selfies with them. None of that is anything I could ever have imagined. I expected fully that Washington, D.C. would be prepared in the way that they were for the Black Lives Matter protests and ready to take that kind of, that level of action to protect the Capitol building. What we saw unfold there represents the very worst of who we are as Americans, and especially of who we are as white Americans. The level of white supremacy and the way it played out between the protesters and the cops. It has to be, the worst example of what any Black American might imagine in their worst nightmare about what goes on behind closed doors where it's all white people and the cops, or all white people and the authorities. And the enabling of this faction of the Republican Party has to be stopped. It has to. If we don't put an immediate stop to it, it will continue, that those seeds that are being planted, that have been planted and reawakened and fed and nourished in all of us, simply through hearing that rhetoric all the time, no matter what side you're on. If you're doing the work and you're really working hard at addressing your own white supremacy, you're aware of how painful it is and about how painful that process really is because of the way it's constantly being fed to us. Constantly. And it's never been worse or more egregious than it is right now. This administration and its supporters have caused more harm, more suffering, and more damage over the last 4 years than we have seen maybe, in over 100. We have got to take the action that we can take as human beings who care about democracy and who care about the fragile nature of our intersectional, interracial democracy. And we need to speak out. It doesn't look like Mike Pence and the cabinet are going to enact the 25th Amendment to take Donald Trump out. Social media is only willing to go so far to stop him. I don't believe that he can be trusted for 12 more days. I have no reason to believe that he possibly can be trusted. Even in his statement yesterday, where he suddenly flip-flopped 180 degrees from where he'd been the day before, he couldn't help but to add that little dog whistle right at the end of his speech to let all of his supporters know, I'm not going to go anywhere, I'm still here, and we're still going to fight this fight. Until people understand in a really visceral, really powerful way that this is not going to be tolerated by the majority of Americans, those seeds are going to continue. They're going to continue to grow. They will continue to fester. The man, Donald Trump, has to be stopped. His supporters, his most virulent supporters, like Josh Hawley from the state of Missouri, and Ted Cruz, and, a multitude of others who have continued to toe the line throughout all of this in one way or another, have got to be taken out of Congress if we can possibly do that. And the fact of the matter is, we can. There's not a huge amount the average person can do to get Donald Trump out of office in the next 12 days. However, we can ask that Congress throw out the members of the Senate and the House of Representatives who are perpetuating the lies. The lies hurt all of us. They hurt absolutely every single one of us because we're not separate. The middle path in Buddhism is about recognizing that nothing is separate. I'm not separate from you. You're not separate from me. We're interdependent. We always have been. If we don't protect one another, regardless of race, regardless of religion, income, whatever the differing factors are, if we don't protect one another and our right to be who we are, how can we possibly benefit one another and ourselves, as individuals and as a greater society, which then has an impact on the rest of the world, most of which is looking down on us right now. We're, as a bastion of democracy, we cannot allow any further divisions in this country around race, around politics, around lies, and allow democracy itself to be eroded through that process. They're all connected. Don't be fooled into thinking that you can separate these as different things, because they're yesterday, Wednesday and Thursday, we saw how deeply connected, how deeply interconnected all of those things really are. And it's painful. It's traumatizing. The only way we can put a stop to this, I think, is to get in touch with Congress people who are the ones in a position to be able to act on this. Otherwise, we'll have to wait until the next election. Personally, as a resident of the state of Missouri, I don't want to wait until there's a further election to unseat Josh Hawley. In great part because I don't trust the rest of my state and the Republican constituents who seem to make up the majority to recognize that he is dangerous enough that he needs to be unseated. I've heard him referred to on the news as Trump 2.0 by scholars. The difference between Hawley and Trump is that Hawley is a lot smarter, better educated, which means he's a lot slimier and woollier and more prepared to get in there and find ways of pulling out all the stops to fool us and find ways to tap all those little places inside of you, white people. Okay? All of those places that we might have inside of us that are left vulnerable through wounding, through fear, through hitting a glass ceiling and breaking your neck but surviving it. I mean, whatever that wound may be, they're going to play on it to try and perpetuate this agenda. The only thing we can do is ask for Congress to vote against anyone who was involved in the lies about the election. So if you are among the vast majority of the United States who knows, understands, and trusts the facts of the situation, that that the election is valid, that Joe Biden did legally win the election, and that the only fraud that we're seeing is coming from the White House and its supporters, then we've got to take this action on behalf of everyone. This is not just about Republicans. This is not just about even just about the United States. This is about the world. We can't afford to destabilize everything right now. So find out, we all need to take responsibility for finding out who every single member of Congress was that perpetuated these lies. We know Josh Hawley and Ted Cruz, they're right at the top of my personal list. There are several more besides. We need to ask that they be unseated. This would happen through all Democrats and half of Republicans being willing to say, you cannot be here. You cannot continue. You cannot keep a seat. Until we can do that, I'm afraid that the soft touch that we saw taken by the DC police, officers allowing people in, again, taking selfies, and yes, I realize that yes, there was a police officer killed. There was a protester killed or an insurrectionist killed. There were police officers injured, etc. I realize that. Please don't comment about that here. I really don't want to hear it. I've done my research. I know what I'm talking about. Those comments are going to be deleted and removed. I'm asking here for solidarity and unity, and I'm just asking that we all take the action that we can take as citizens of this country to ask our congressional representatives in the House and Senate to unseat the liars and the people who are fomenting this system, so that we can begin to uproot this disease from our system, from our people, and hopefully, please, within ourselves. So that's my big takeaway from this. I'm sure there will be more to come, but right now I'm really afraid of what I'm seeing, and I'm most afraid by the people in the Republican Party who still seem to think that there's something okay on any level about any of this. The problem with that party is that the more who seem to think there might be something that's really not so bad, the more that seems to be the way that they're going. We've got to make our voices heard again, and we've got to do it voluntarily because the voting has been done. All right, folks, thank you. And I will undoubtedly come back with more again sometime soon.